There are studies that show that there are actually higher instances of dementia and Alzheimer's disease in people with low cholesterol. And that's crazy to me because we're putting them on drugs to lower their cholesterol. Then they end up in a nursing home because they can't remember anything and they don't know who anybody is.
Oh, yeah, to most people, that would be unbelievable. Alzheimer's not curable. It's not,
Yeah.
I mean, if it goes to anything, if anything goes too far, you're going to have a problem, right?
Yeah.
But if you catch that early and
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching our videos. If you'd like to support us some more, you can explore our homemade natural skincare products at purelytallow.com. Thank you so much for supporting my small business. Hey everybody, welcome to the Carnivore Revolution. I'm Serena, and today my guest is Phil Escott. Phil is a friend, a musician, an author, and a carnivore, and we're going to get his story today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me on your show, Serena.
I'm excited about this. I'm excited. You are one of like the OGs that people talk about. I was interviewing Mark the other day, and he mentioned that you were one of his first experiences with carnivore, and that he was involved with a group with you years and years ago. And so I was like, that's it. I'm asking Phil. I got to hear all the stuff from the OGs here. So let's start with your history, because you used to be a plant-based advocate, and so let's tell everybody how that happened and why that changed for you.
Well, there's a lot of things that con us into this plant-based nonsense, whether it's studies or animal welfare or all of this nonsense. But for me, it was the spiritual side of it. So, for 30 odd years, I considered myself a serious yogi. And along with that came, you're never going to get enlightened unless you eat plant-based. If you eat meat, you'll never ascend to 5G, 5D. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's there's so many deceptions behind all of this, and that was the one that caught me. And yeah, I used to write books and stuff and articles on plant-based eating and Ayurveda and that kind of thing, probably back in the early to mid 90s. And then I ran a gym in the late 90s and ended up really sort of muscly and looked pretty healthy, although the whispers were there. There was the odd joint pain that shouldn't have happened, and I thought, oh, well, it's just the training, it's this and it's that. And then I kind of gave that up and got rid of the gym and ate a load of crap. Well, I was eating crap before, but I thought it was healthy.
Yeah.
But then I slipped into the kind of, 4 bowls of crunchy nut cornflakes and pita bread with cheese on for breakfast. And then, pasta and cheese sauce for lunch. And then, I think, well, I have to be healthy in the evening. So I'll make my vegetarian Indian rice and dal and whatever. And then I'd spend the night sort of waking up and taking antacids and things. Yeah. So, these kind of things often fool us into it. But by 2010, things really came to a head, and sort of one ankle went a bit weird. And I thought it was an old falling off a climbing wall injury sort of restarting, but then it went to the other ankle, then it went to my knee, then it went everywhere. And during that year, I'd also had arthritis, which, people, when I went to the docs about it, they said, have you got some arthritic condition? No, it's usually associated with that. Obviously I did, but I hadn't really admitted to it. And was covering it up with non-steroidal anti-inflammatories that ruined my gut and probably opened it up to, the rest of the chaos that went on in the body. So yeah, 2010, end of 2010, totally crippled, big fat bastard, and not well at all. Loads of other issues too, but the main thing was that crippling psoriatic arthritis. So I thought, well, I'm plant-based, so what I need to do is to go even more plant-based. So I went vegan.
Plant-based harder.
Plant-based harder, yeah, no mercy. And so I decided, okay, vegan. And then raw vegan, and then fruitarian. And by that time, I'd lost so much weight, all my muscle had gone. I still had the inflammation in the joints, except that I'd also gone barking mad, and my teeth had all de-enameled. And I had kidney stones from all the spinach smoothies and that kind of thing. So I knew that was the wrong path. And then somewhere around 2011, I discovered the wonderful Natasha Campbell McBride and her GAPS diet. And she became such a hero of mine, and really saved my life with her book, The Gut and Psychology Syndrome, which, just works for everything, really. And I got to get her on my Red Pill Buddhist podcast recently. And that's the first time I've been a bit starstruck, because she was just great. She was brilliant. Excuse me. And and she was on my podcast, which we also had her speaking at one of our conferences last weekend over Zoom. Still haven't met her to give her a big hug, but hopefully in Spain later in the year I will do. She might come to that. Got an event set up with Anthony Chafee and all sorts in Spain. But yeah, and then I decided, it's really time that I admitted that we have always eaten meat. We are definitely carnivores, and so I slid into that, and I slid into the whole keto thing. But of course, we need our fruit and veg, don't we? Maybe not fruit because it's a bit too sugary, but the veg is great. I didn't figure out plant toxins then, but I had a few veg with my fatty meat. And by 2013, yeah, things were really reversing, but it took me a while. And I wrote my book, Arthritis, the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me, which goes into all the spiritual side of it and all of that kind of thing, as well as all the comedy struggles with the medical establishment and the diet and other things that I discovered, because I also discovered Jack Kruse around that time. And Jack Kruse is he's all into the whole light thing, circadian rhythm and the sun, and also cold thermogenesis, that kind of thing. So I incorporated all of that kind of business. And yeah, everything worked great. But I wish I could put a little forward, another little forward. Jack's done one on my book anyway, but to do another little forward of saying, please, everybody, just go fully carnivore right now. Fatty beef and lamb if you've got autoimmunity, and that will blow it up. I didn't discover that till 2015, but that's how I've eaten since 2015, except for a little blip in 2022 where I didn't eat any plants, but I ate eggs, chicken, pork, and dairy on tour with bands and, out a lot and festivals and things that we were playing. And I thought that's fine. I've been symptom free. I've been a carnivore for 8 years. Not so. It didn't blow me up straight away. It took me the whole summer. But yeah, the winter of 2022, 23, I was absolutely crippled. Worse than I was when I wrote the book, before when I wrote the story, my other story in the book. And I lost 45 pounds, was on crutches, legs wasted away, suicidal pain levels. And I went straight on Anthony Chafee's channel because, mine's horribly shadow banned, as we mentioned just before we started recording. So I thought I want to get on Anthony's channel because he's got a huge reach and just warn people, really, just be open about it. I've always been open about it. I really messed up that year. It didn't break me in the first month, the second month, whatever. But if you're autoimmune, you really, I think, have to be that strict. My good friend, Sophia Clements at Paleomedicina in Hungary, the results they're getting from their Paleolithic ketogenic diet, the PKD thing, is amazing. And the difference between ordinary carnivore and sort of lion diet, but high fat, people call it lion diet now, but high fat, the PKD kind of thing, it's like night and day. So I got rid of it in about 3 months, where it took me about 3 years before. But, it's when I do consults and stuff, it's all about really warning people how strict they have to be. I've taken every wrong turn in the book. I always say that all my knowledge has come from being a complete idiot and making more wrong turns than everybody else. But in that way, I can help people, through their wrong turns. And the subtlest differences can make all the difference when you're, the subtlest changes rather, when you're really suffering in that flare stage of the autoimmunity.
Sorry, hang on. My dog is barking because my husband's home, so I had muted myself. Hang on just a minute. And my phone rang, and now I can't get it back to being just you on the screen. I don't know what I did. My phone rang, and it's connected to my computer. I don't have any idea how to fix it. I mean, I can still see you, but you're in my place.
Zoom usually records it as two versions anyway.
Yeah.
The splits are swapping. It's fine.
I don't even know what happened, but oh well. Okay. All right. She's done barking. Okay. And then I know that your mom had some health trouble also. Can you talk to me about that and tell me what happened with her and how she was able to move past cancer?
Yeah, well, leading up to the cancer thing, she's she died eventually in 2018, and but that wasn't to do with the cancer. She was like 95 or whatever. It was just 2 bouts of pneumonia that usually takes people out at that age. But she said to me, "Look, I'm having this really bad reflux," and if she had a meal, it was like all coming up, and it was just terrible. So I thought, okay, well, I'll take her down to the the criminal medical system just to find out what it is. And she couldn't really take a camera down there or anything, and at her age, and so she did one of those sort of barium swallow things and an X-ray, and I went along to the consultant with her, who was a guy locally who is renowned for being a bit strict and a bit, a bit barking, in his sort of aggression towards unusual ideas. And we went to see him, and yeah, you've got hiatus hernia. I mean, everybody gets diagnosed with that these days, don't they? But then they get you on a load of proton pump inhibitors, like they did to me when I was, told I had a hiatus hernia. Anyway, so I said to him, expecting to be attacked, how about we go the really high fat route, bone broths, high fat meat, all that kind of thing? Because I seem to have fixed my gut and reversed my autoimmunity. How about we try that? And I thought I was waiting, when you're talking to a doc like that, you're just waiting for them to jump on you and say, don't be ridiculous. And, your kid is always an idiot, depending, however old you are, your kid's always an idiot. So my mum just chimed in and said, so what are you going to do for me? And he said, if you listen to your son, you'll never need a gastroenterologist again. You'll never need any of us. Blew me away. He'd obviously studied outside of his medical school training.
Yeah.
Anyway, so my jaw hit the floor, so did hers, and she did it. And everything reversed pretty easily, all the gut issues, which gave her confidence, which was cool for what was coming, because, a year or so later, she said to me, I've got this big lump in my breast. So I had a look, and it was big. It was like 6 centimeters across, and the skin was starting to go weird. And I thought, yeah, that's got to be breast cancer. And so, yeah, we went and had it confirmed. And the oncologist obviously thought that I was mad to be, saying no treatment. Let's try all this first. But I threw everything at it, all the healing mushrooms, all the sort of apricot kernels, all that kind of thing. It didn't really do anything. What did help was the sort of full-on Rick Simpson oil, cannabis oil. But, in England, that's like 7 years in jail if you get caught for that. It's insane. And also, she was getting too stoned. At her age, she wasn't dealing with it. So I stopped that, and then it started to get worse again. But then we did an iodine protocol. Now, I know about them these days and how much to give. But then it was just a hunch, just an intuition that, people with fibrocystic breast syndrome, if you paint iodine on the breasts and take iodine, that tends to disappear very quickly. So I thought, well, okay, this is a hormonal thing. It's connected to that. Let's give it a go. So I put her on an iodine protocol for about 3 months. And then shortly after that, when I'd given up, and I thought it's going to ulcerate through, and I'd spoken to the oncologist and I'd said, if it gets that bad, could we maybe do a local anesthetic, take the breast off, and then we'll deal with the rest? Oh, yes, he said, that's no problem. So anyway, about a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so after the iodine protocol, she said to me, hey, it's reversing. The lump's going down. And I thought, no, it can't be. I'd given up by then, to be honest. We also had her on a carnivore diet, if I didn't mention that, because everything works better when you're on that. And I had a look, and yeah, it really had drastically reduced. So we went back to the oncologist, and he must have thought, we're back here to ask for the breast to be removed. So I didn't say a word. And sorry if you've heard this story before on other podcasts, anyone who's listening, but it was quite amusing, because he just examined her, and I could see him. He sort of stopped, and he turned around and he said, how on earth did you do that? And I said, well, I gave you all the whole list of stuff that we were going to do. I told you, we'll nail it somehow. And I said, is that the first natural cancer reversal you've seen? And you're an oncologist? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I'm a drummer, and I've seen quite a few. I love doing that. But anyway, she was fine. That thing carried on reversing. And I think the lump got so much smaller, the skin was fine. She was okay. And I'm sure that if she'd lived longer than 2018, it would have disappeared. But, the lumps are not the problem, are they? It's a process. And so, yeah, we fixed that. And it's not the only one. Funny how bad that video on my YouTube channel is shadow banned. Very difficult to search for, seeing the pictures and stuff. Very difficult to search for. They don't they don't like cancer reversals, the mainstream. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people can't wrap their mind around how natural things can work when we have medicine. And I do think there is a place for modern medicine. I think, if you need certain things, you're going to go to a doctor. But I think for things that are metabolic diseases, things that are things within ourselves that that we can control. The problem is people don't know what those things are. People don't know what to do.
Well, they don't, because they've been educated into all the
Yeah.
wrong things. The thing that breaks my heart is that when people get sick, they think that they have to go, oh, look, the most healthy thing is your 5 a day, your plant-based
That's
thing,
right.
even if they still eat meat. So
Mhm.
they're still taking in all those plant toxins. They haven't educated themselves in plant toxins, because the healthiest thing in the world is fruit and veg, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah.
But when you look into it, my God, I mean, what should have happened to me? It's 9 years in carnivore. So I should have died of scurvy. How long ago? Probably at least 9 years.
At least.
At least. Yeah, I should have had heart disease, cancer. I should have had all of these things. And how on earth have I had a poo for the last 9 years? No fiber,
Crazy.
high diet. It's
Mhm.
insane.
This.
So all
It
of
is.
these things, but yet here I am. So, as vegans say to me, clearly I'm lying. So I must be sort of
Right.
supplementing with broccoli and quinoa or something.
Mhm.
But seriously, I'm not.
You've had your experience with that, and you've realized that you don't need those things. And the 5 a day, the colorway thing, I used to teach a homeschool, we homeschool, and I used to teach a homeschool PE class. And I used to give the kids different coloring papers every week, 5 a day, the colorway. So they would take them home and they would color and they would come back and tell me all the fruits and vegetables they ate. And then it got changed to 7 a day, the colorway. So I started using those coloring pages instead. And now I'm 0 a day, the colorway, and healthier than I was then.
It's amazing, isn't it, what gets taught in school?
Yeah.
I love my kids because they've been carnivore for a long time. My
Mhm.
youngest, since he was born, really, breast
Amazing.
milk and meat and the occasional chocolate binge,
Mhm.
but no vegetables. And I say to him, he comes out of school, and I say, so what have you learned today, Peter? And he goes, more bullshit. And it's the same. It's on all levels, isn't it? It's everything. It's not just the ridiculous food pyramid or what we have in this country, the eat well plate, which is unbelievable. I mean, it's mostly carbohydrates, but starches. You've got to fill most of your plate up with that, which is understandable because people, they think that comes from natural sources and whatever. But then
Mhm.
they've got a section for sweets. And then they've got a sticker that goes next to it saying, always choose the low fat option.
Yeah.
And it's insane. This is what
Yes.
they're drilling into kids. And, I mean, you can see the horrible hormonal disruption among kids. And,
Yeah.
I see it at my son's school, and there's, girls growing breasts at like 6, 7 years old. And it's all gone horribly wrong. And there is a war, a huge war on health at the moment. And as it gets worse, as they're trying to do all the things that I won't go down the tinfoil rabbit hole on this podcast, but you can imagine what I mean.
Don't get me shadow banned, Kay.
I no, 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 I won't. I won't. I won't. Let's not mention that. That was pure speculation, and not at all the opinion of this wonderful podcast. But the war on diet, we can get away with that because at the
Mhm.
moment, and it is happening. There's veganism being pushed, even though it's just destroying people's lives. There's all the plant-based stuff. There's the fake meats. There's the Beyond burgers, which are just a absolute chemical storm, aren't they? And
Mhm.
you know, a burger. What are the ingredients? Like minced beef, salt. That's it. You look at the ingredients of a Beyond burger, and it's you can't
Yeah.
pronounce half of them.
Yeah.
And this is what they're trying to push us towards. So it's just lovely to wake people up about this and say, yes, you can eat your ancestral diet. You can
Mhm.
eat animal fats. You can eat all
Mhm.
this meat. And all of the studies that have been done proving otherwise have you ever seen one that has included a full carnivore?
Never. And they say it's because
Oh,
it's unethical, but I don't understand that at all. There are plenty of us that would volunteer for that.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's funny, as a friend of mine once said, isn't it funny how all of the things that are supposed to be caused by fatty red meat are reversed when all you eat is fatty red meat?
Yeah, it's really amazing. And when you're in shape or you're thin or you're healthy and don't have a lot of autoimmune disease and things like that, people say, "Oh, you're just lucky."
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and also, oh well, you've cut out the processed food, so that's why it's working. But
Mhm.
in time, you will get heart disease and whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen scans with calcifications in my arteries. I'm 61 now, and at 50, I saw those scans. I don't have any of that now.
It's
And all of
amazing.
the carnivores seem to be returning, clear coronary artery calcium scans. What's
Mhm.
happening there? Is it just luck? Is it?
Right.
Bizarre, isn't it? Bizarre.
Yeah.
It's reversing all of these things, and yet meat's
Yeah.
held up as the thing that's going to cause all these issues.
Yeah. So let's talk about your experience with oxalates. I know you had some experience with that, and some things happen maybe like even multiple years after becoming carnivore. And I think it's important for people to know what oxalates are, why we shouldn't eat them, and then what can happen sometimes later after you stop eating them.
Well, oxalates are just one of the many hundreds of plant toxins, but that we take in from our healthy five a day. But I think oxalates is, it's come to the forefront recently, but it is one of the nastier ones because it just settles in joints, organs, eyes, everything really as oxalic acid crystals, and they're like little glass shards
Mhm.
microscopically. So these are all stuck in your organs and all over the place. And it's very difficult for the body to get rid of them. So it tends to get rid of them in waves over decades, even. Sally Norton and her book Toxic Superfoods goes into this. And, I had her on my podcast recently because that episode I talked about in 22, 23, the winter, it started off with another kidney stone. I'm like, I haven't had any oxalates for eight
Mhm.
years. And I said to Sally, is it possible, that this was related to all the spinach smoothies that I had back in 2011? Probably near to a lethal dose every day for
Mhm.
months. And she said, yeah, absolutely. This can happen in waves afterwards. So, I really urge people not to do these superfoods because we all take in oxalates from processed foods. We take it in from, dark chocolate, almonds, all of these kind of things. Turmeric that we think is an anti-inflammatory, that's full of it. With my Indian vegetarian cooking, I was using a lot of that. And so I was obviously full of them anyway, but then I must have dosed my body up hugely with thinking that I was going to go really healthy and juice up all these leaves. And what people don't realize is that, ancestral tribes and modern hunter-gatherer tribes, they don't eat stalks and leaves. Okay, they might eat the odd tuber or whatever, and the odd berry and nut and honey if they find it, but they don't eat stalks and leaves. They know how poisonous plants are. So, no hunter gatherer has ever gone out and killed an animal, brought it back, rejoiced that they've got this beautiful kill and all this food, and then
Mhm.
said, no, but we need a side salad. It's never happened.
Uh-huh.
And so, I poisoned myself because I got caught in all of that. And I just urge people not to have anything to do with that stuff. It's touted as having a load of nutrients, useful nutrients on paper, but they're not bioavailable. They're all bound up in digestible cellulose, and we don't get anything out of it. So
Mhm.
stop it. You get more nutrition from a steak on its own than you do a steak and a salad. And
Yeah.
that's very difficult for people to understand because there's
Mhm.
the anti-nutrients in the salad and in the healthy broccoli and kale and all of that inedible crap. It ruins the absorption of the nutrients in the meat. So yeah, so many myths. I mean, isn't it easy? Don't you find that it's so easy to explain to somebody in 5 minutes what to do, but then you've got to spend 2 or 3 hours, or even months if it's a vegan, but 2 or 3 hours getting rid of the brainwashing about why those 5 minutes you just explained are not complete lunacy.
Mhm. That's true. And even years. I mean, I'm friends with people who, it's been more than 2.5 years for me, and they still think I'm insane. They still think that it's ridiculous. They still don't understand. And I tell people, you mentioned a steak and a salad, and I tell people, if you're still hungry when you're done with your steak, have another steak. Like, you don't have to have the sides with it. You don't have to have the salad. You don't because later when you have an upset stomach or something, you're just because it's ingrained in us, it's in our heads, you're going to blame the steak for it, or the steak and the butter, or whatever. You're going to blame the fatty meal for it when that's not what the problem is at all.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One of the first signs I find um, that things are going wrong and the gut is compromised is indigestion,
Mm.
and bloating, farting, all of that kind of thing that we just think is normal.
Mhm.
Half the ads on TV are for something like Gaviscon or whatever, some awful thing that reduces the acidity of the stomach, which is exactly the opposite of what you want. So, you have all these warning signs in the gut and ignore them. And for the farting thing, I think it's important for people to realize this. When you see vegans and they say, "Oh well, it's perfectly natural," this is what you need to do. But when I remember vegetarian and vegan, we were naughty boys sharing a house back then in the sort of yogi days, but we'd go out into the dome, the Transcendental Meditation Center, to go and do all our program, of meditation and that comedy flying and all of that sort of thing. And then we'd come home and we'd sort of spend the evening with lighters, kind of lighting our farts and stuff, and you're like, okay, it's amusing and all that, but for God's sake, you're not supposed to do that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We had this sort of methane level in the house where, it was sort of oxygen at a low level and then sort of methane above. And, we don't realize just, how many warning signs our body is giving us.
Mm.
And it's just so rare to have any gas of any sort as a carnivore. And so we blame it on meat or something. Oh, this is very difficult to digest. It's heavy to digest. Of course it's not. It's the most easily digestible thing there is. I always say to vegans, they say meat is indigestible. Okay, I tell you what, eat a steak and some sweet corn. And then the next day you look in the toilet and see what you can identify. It won't be bits of steak.
No.
Corn is not digestible, and most of the plant matter isn't. So, that's obviously what's causing the trouble, because we're not adapted to digest that stuff, because we don't have rumen, we're not hindgut fermenters, we're not adapted to eat it. And it is weird, isn't it? Because I was the same. I came to carnivore after trying every single other diet.
Right.
And most people do that, don't they? They think that's mad. I can't possibly do that. They come to it in desperation. Hopefully that's changing now, because people are seeing the results that, the people who kind of pioneered it. Well, we say we pioneered it. I've eaten only meat for 9 years. That's not pioneering. There are cultures that have done it for millennia.
Yeah.
So I can't take any credit for that. I just got desperate before everybody else did, I guess.
Right.
Most people in the West. But it's funny, because then people think that you just kind of Googled something and you come up with this lunatic idea. No, we've been through everything.
Yeah.
It's that thing that I love to say to vegans, what do you call somebody who is a proper expert on the vegan diet? The answer is a carnivore. because we've learned it's nonsense. And then past that, we've been on to sort of Mediterranean, and then we've been on to paleo, and then keto, and then, and then into carnivore, and loads of things in between, as we transition. And I find that some of the best educated people are carnivores on diet, because you don't come to it without getting rid of all the levels of brainwashing about everything else, all the plant-based stuff. It's a difficult journey, unless, there's some great people out there now speaking about it. There's you're doing an amazing job on your channel. And, there's the ones who sort of end up as superstars, like Anthony Chafee, Ken Berry, Sean Baker. Fantastic job they're doing, and they've got doctor in front of their name. So people take them more seriously. I mean, they are amazing and they have that knowledge, but no more really than a lot of other lay people. But people still have that trust of the white coat and the stethoscope, don't they?
Yeah. I should have been a doctor. I knew I should have been a doctor.
Yeah, I know, me too. It's funny when you discover all this stuff and you say, okay, right. In my case, I've studied diet for about 40 years. I was wrong for 30 of them completely. And I was half wrong for another 5. And, you think, okay, what course can I take? What can I do to give me some kind of credibility? Because otherwise I'm just, I did a blog post ages ago. I don't know how much swearing I can do on this channel, but the title is, okay, cool. The title just says, you're not a doctor, who the f do you think you are? Because I mean, that's what people say to us, don't they?
Yeah, right. That's right. They do.
Yeah, they do. And they don't realize that we've studied and studied. Oh, but you're not a doctor, you're not a dietitian. Yeah,
that's right.
I'm not a dietitian. I am not one of the fattest people in the hospital trying to tell people to eat all the wrong stuff.
It's true.
Yeah. So, we don't have that kind of respect, which is a shame, but I think that's kind of changing. But yes, it does. If you have doctor in front of your name, even though at the beginning people don't realize that having doctor in front of your name actually means that you've gone against everything that a doctor stands for. in
Yeah.
the medical system and in the traditional, learning that they get in med school. So where they get about an hour's training in diet, don't they? Something like that. And it's the wrong training.
Yes.
And half of them were probably just drunk the night before and didn't bother to turn up. So they don't
That's
know
right.
anyway. So,
Yeah.
it's funny, isn't it? You're not a doctor. What do you know? Oh, I've studied it for 40 years and a
Mhm.
doctor studied it for 1 hour if they bothered to turn
That's
up.
right.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
listen to
and
your
then
doctor then.
they don't have time to do the research as doctors. You know, they're busy. They're busy doing, all the doctor stuff. They don't have time to keep up with all the research papers and go home and study about nutrition. It's just crazy. Just you talking about them being out partying and stuff reminds me of that joke. What do you call a doctor who graduated D's in his class or graduated last in his class?
So,
You call him a doctor.
I
I mean, the
can't.
doctor who graduates last in his class is still a doctor, right? So like, you got to keep that stuff in mind. A few minutes ago, you were talking about like the flatulence, all the gas and all that stuff and how that's not normal. The other thing that's not normal, and it just kind of hit me like this, I had this light bulb moment when I was listening to Sally's book months ago about, Sally says that all of the things or most of the things that we think are just because we're getting old are actually probably because of oxalates, or a big portion of them are. And that's just a crazy thought that all of the things like the arthritis and the brain fog and the dementia and all of those things could be helped if we would just try something different, if we would try something that's not mainstream and it doesn't make it bad just because our own personal doctor doesn't agree with it or because mainstream doesn't agree with it. And it doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. And 30 days of trying something new or something different is not going to hurt you. And my evidence is my proof is the story that I am sharing, which is how carnivore has helped me. And your truth and your evidence and all the evidence you need is how carnivore has helped you. And there are enough of us out there, I think. There is somebody for every medical concern that any of the viewers have. There is somebody that has helped themselves in that situation or cured themselves of, a certain ailment or something just by eliminating, first of all, the processed foods, the sugars, the seed and vegetable oils, but also by eliminating the fruits and vegetables. And I don't know what it's going to take for people to finally like open their eyes to it. But I think the only thing that we can do is just keep talking about it. Don't you?
Yes, but these are all absolutely useless anecdotes, Serena, aren't they? This is
Mhm.
this is what people accuse us of.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter that there's tens of thousands of them now.
Mhm.
Or it's funny, there was my friend Bart Kay, who has a hilarious channel, and he
Yes.
totally ripped this vegan apart. Dr. Peter, I can't remember his surname,
Mhm.
but he's now put out a video debunking Bart Kay's debunk of him. And it's all nonsense, obviously. But I've started talking about this sort of underneath, and they say, he's called me the Hulk Hogan of meat trolls in the past couple of days, and I thought that's a great compliment. I'll take that as a compliment. But I thought, Bart's totally destroyed you on the science, because Bart knows more about the studies that he's talking about than
Yeah.
even he does. And we've all heard them before. The vegans come up, look, I've got this study. It's amazing. No, God. Yes, we were looking at that 20 years ago. Yes, we've heard of
Mhm.
Esselstyn. Yes, we know who Gregor is, and we actually can see how emaciated he is. And
He does
he
not look healthy.
doesn't he doesn't look healthy. The man's
Mhm.
10 years younger than me, and I look at him and I think, what went wrong? Well, I know what went
Well, we
wrong.
know am I wrong.
Exactly. But and then the vegans come up and they go, well, you've got no evidence for this. You've got no studies. What have you got on your side? I say, well, there's so many anecdotes out there now that you say are useless, that are much better than the epidemiological nonsense that you have in the studies that are financed by the big food and big pharma companies
Yeah.
that you think are gospel. Think for yourself. I
Mhm.
also have the whole of human history behind me,
Yeah.
and this is what these people ate. They did not eat quinoa during
Mhm.
ice ages. They didn't have any of the modern fruits and veg. They didn't exist.
That's right.
There's nowhere in the world that you can subsist on a plant-based diet in the wild.
Mhm.
Nowhere.
Yeah.
People think that they can go out into the Amazon and it's beautiful. It's this Garden of Eden with all these mangoes everywhere and bananas, and it's not like that. These things are only seasonal. The fruits are not the ones that you'd recognize. They're bitter. They're not much fun to eat. They're covered in bat piss, and the monkeys get them before you can get them anyway. It's
Mhm.
you have to eat meat, whatever latitude you're in. I had the wonderful Mary Ruddick on my podcast, who, was crippled by veganism and was
Yeah.
bedridden, and now she fixed herself on a carnivore diet, now lives with all the tribes. And it's
Mhm.
wonderful to hear her accounts of what they actually eat. And it's nothing like we're told
Mm-mm.
in the sort of blue zone,
Yeah.
pushes, that bollocks. It's 90 to 100% meat, depending on latitude. That's what they
Mhm.
eat. That's why they don't get sick like we do. That's
Mhm.
it. Know all about the plant toxins.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about cholesterol? I know that you have a good way of explaining that. You've talked about cholesterol. Why are people not to be worried about cholesterol when you eat just like a meat-based diet?
Well, there's a few sides to that. When you see the drug companies always lowering the level
Yes.
that cholesterol's supposed to be at,
Yep.
just so they can sell statins to more people,
Mhm.
to give them Alzheimer's and all sorts of other
Mhm.
issues.
That's right.
So then they can sell them the Alzheimer's drugs that even by their own admission don't work. So they've got
Mhm.
to keep bringing down the cholesterol limits. But there are studies out there, and I don't like to rely on studies, but they show, a lot of them, that the higher your cholesterol, the lower all-cause mortality. So the whole thing was built on absolute nonsense and all the biased research that Ansel Keys did back in the 50s and 60s, or
Right.
whatever it was. His 7 countries study, where they threw out all the inconvenient
That's
evidence and
right.
decided that fat and animal fat and cholesterol was causing heart disease.
Yep.
I think it's simple to me that if you're on a high fat carnivore or keto diet and your doctor tells you that you have high cholesterol, just say to him, well, that LDL's high, that you say is bad cholesterol. There is no such thing as bad cholesterol. It's always there to help us.
Mhm.
But you say to them, oh, so is that the small or large particles? You've tested for that, haven't you? Most of them don't even know what you're talking about. So if you're on some really bad diet and you have high LDL, yes, it can be a sign that there's something wrong. But that's still the body trying to help you and patch up the inflammation and damage in the arteries with these plaques. Body's still trying to help you. But I think what I like to look at it is it's the paramedic at the car crash. It's not the cause of the car crash.
That's
It's
right.
come there to help. And if you then go onto a high fat diet and you have high LDL, as long as your triglycerides are lower or level with your HDL, it shows that LDL is perfectly good and it's working as it's supposed to. And it's not even patching up damage. It's doing what it's supposed to do. My mum had a stroke back in 1996, I think, when she was on statins.
Mhm.
We got her off those, and even on a crap diet, she never had another episode. But then we got her on high fat, and the docs used to say, "Oh, her cholesterol's so high, you've got to get her on a statin." I just laugh and
Mhm.
say, it's that high, particularly in women of that age, or anything over kind of middle age. Having high cholesterol with the HDL and triglycerides balanced is a beautiful thing. It shows that
Mhm.
everything's working perfectly. It's protecting us and doing what it's supposed to do. It's this arrogance, isn't it, that
Mhm.
people know better than nature.
Yeah.
That's what gets me all the time. Oh, you've got to bring that down because the body doesn't know what it's doing. And the drug companies do, who are going to make billions
Mhm.
out of selling you something that is better than nature.
And
Amazing.
there are, for people who don't know, there are studies. Here we go with studies again, but everybody's going to ask for studies. There are studies that show that there are actually higher instances of dementia and Alzheimer's disease in people with low cholesterol.
Yeah.
And that's crazy to me because we're putting them on drugs to lower their cholesterol. Then they end up in a nursing home because they can't remember anything and they don't know who anybody is. But I have actually seen people say that they went in and got their parents or their grandparents and took them home, stopped taking the drugs, and gave them a high fat diet. And literally that day, they remembered things they didn't remember before. I mean, it's just the fat and the cholesterol can do so much for our brains. That it is so good for us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the amazing things is seeing all of the mental health issues clear up.
Yeah.
Once you start running on ketones, get the gut healed, the gut brain connection is so
Mhm.
important.
So important.
Wonderful psychiatrist, which she works for the NHS in England, actually, and she calls herself Carnivore Shrink
Yes,
on
Dr. Brown.
Yeah, Rachel Brown,
Yep.
and I had her on my podcast, and she also spoke at our conference a couple of weekends ago.
Yeah.
And so I got to hang out with her. She's lovely. She's great fun. But when I got her on the podcast, only half an hour before, I'd been on one of our Big Fat Challenge Zoom calls that we have. And this lady had come up and said, I want to talk to you about my mum. You know, she's, you know, in her 80s or whatever. And she's gone carnivore and she's lost a load of weight. She's really happy with it, but she's got vascular dementia. And we got her out of the home and got her eating the right things. And she's lost a load of weight. And, but she's got the runs, you know, it's kind of normal first thing in carnivore. So we talked her through that. But I said to her, so what happened with the cognition? Oh, she said that came flooding back. You know, and I had to say that to Rachel at the beginning of the podcast because so just half an hour before I got you on here, check this out because we're going to be talking about this on the podcast. And
amazing.
it's just lovely, isn't it? It was just like, oh yeah, that came flooding back.
Isn't that crazy?
But to most people, that would be unbelievable.
Yeah, it is.
Alzheimer's not curable. It's not,
yeah.
You know, I mean, if it goes to anything, if anything goes too far, you're going to have a problem, right?
Yeah.
But if you catch that early and people start to lose this cognition, I don't know, you know, they have these diagnoses for it. There are a lot of things that go on with the brain that can cause tremendous brain fog and memory loss. And I remember walking around the house, you know, when I was vegan back in when I was trying to fix the arthritis with it. And I just had so much brain fog. I couldn't think. And I was, my daughter, who's 15 now, was very young at the time, and she had to come running in and saying that, you know, I was burning pans or I'd overflowed the sink or something, or I'd forgotten that I'd run taps. And I was dangerous, you know, as a dad alone while my missus was out working because I always worked. And it was really scary. But then I went on a fish fast, which is the first thing when I came out of veganism. I just ate sardines for a week. All my cognition came flooding back, the whole thing, you know.
Amazing.
And it's incredible how we just destroy every bodily system. But this is the conspiracy, and it's not a theory. This is the conspiracy of the medical system. They want us sick, they want us ill, and so they can sell us this stuff that doesn't work and leads to other drugs and stuff beyond that I won't get into. But you know, it is when you can see how the medical system started with the whole Rockefeller thing back in early last century. You know, you can see all the steps that mankind's made in the wrong direction, you know, starting with agriculture 10,000 years ago, the horrors of seed oils when they brought them in. You know, that is not food. That's not even bad food. That's not food. It's an industrial lubricant.
It used to be engine lubricant.
Yeah.
Sure, let's put it on my salad. Let me make some fries in it.
It's insane, isn't it? Absolutely insane. And even sometimes when you order something in a restaurant now, you get a steak and they put that in it. You know, they put stuff on it. So it's crazy. It's crazy what we've been taught. But you know, we do our best to chip away at all this dogma, and we get told we're mad in the meantime. But hey, how mad are we? I'm still alive after 9 years of eating meat and going into it really, really sick. That should have killed a long time ago.
Yeah, amazing. So if you had a couple of book recommendations, what would they be?
Oh, God, depends what you want. I mean, books. I love Natasha Campbell McBride's books. You know, she's just done the gut and physiology syndrome as well. I think that's wonderful. Takes you through a load of the nonsense that's happened, and she's so eloquent. I think you see, most of my focus is on autoimmunity. You know, so there's a lot of carnivore books out there, carnivore cookbooks, stuff like that. But to find out what you can actually eat when you're autoimmune, the book that Paleo Medicina brought out, their cookbook, is absolutely wonderful recently. I don't know. You know what? I think for people in general, I've got to say, although it's blowing my own trumpet, but not all of my own trumpet, because I was only one of the authors, and Ben Hunt, my partner, who in the Big Fat Challenge and that stuff that we do, he put the words together for this. But our recent Red Pill Food Revolution book that's been remade, but it'll be out in print soon. But if you join the Big Fat Challenge at thebigfatchallenge.com, you can get, along with all the other resources we've got and Zoom calls and everything, there's that book available in PDF, an audio book with Ben reading it. The comments we've got, you know, this one is really about the history of food and how we've been fooled by psychopaths, really trying to control us over the thousands of years, pretty much, not just in recent times when it's got even worse. And I think what Ben's put together there is an absolutely fascinating read. So yeah, the Red Pill Food Revolution by Ben Hunt and a few others of us in smaller print below, because we contributed to it. But fantastic explanation for people who want to understand how this all went wrong. Centuries ago, it all went wrong, and it's got even worse now. And just how even agriculture has facilitated the rise of the psychopath that we get, in so many positions of authority today. Very few psychopaths in society, but a lot of them are in positions of power because that's where they like to be. And if you think about it, with the advent of agriculture, before that, they didn't really have a place in society. You go out and hunt, you bring it back, you didn't destroy the land, you didn't need armies. As soon as you start to ruin the land for growing crops, then you start to need people to defend those crops so that other people don't steal them. Then you get people at the top, who own that land or pretend they do, which is a ridiculous concept, even to this day, that we can own pieces of the earth. Very strange. And so, that enabled the rise of the psychopath, which caused all the problems. And it did. Loads of those threads are tied in that book. Sorry, that was a long answer, but
no, that's
it's
okay.
It's just this week we've sort of got into getting that out in print after all this, so many weird delays we've had. But
yeah,
that'll be available soon in print. But it's there within the Big Fat Challenge. It's just a freebie as part of it. But I think one of the best books ever written. And yeah, those would be my recommendation. Apart from that, just listen to podcasts. So many people don't have time to read these days, but get your phone on airplane mode, and then people can't constantly bother you, and you don't scroll all the time through rubbish. Listen to some good podcasts. Download them. Listen to our stuff. Listen to Anthony Chaffee's. He's got a great channel. Listen to some Jack Cruz podcasts, because that will take you out of just the diet stuff and into all the carnivore, all the stuff outside carnivore, but other ancestral disconnects, all the light, the EMFs, the water, magnetism, all of this kind of thing, really important. And Sarah Pugh, who simplifies that as well, who is wonderful too. Sarah Pugh is great. Dr. Sarah Pugh. She was at our last conference as well, and she's been on my podcast. Get her on. She's amazing. Yeah, she simplifies all of that quantum health stuff. So, get it on all levels, because amazing as carnivore is, if your whole circadian rhythm is out and you're not sleeping, you're not getting enough light in your eyes in the morning, you've got blue light in your house at night, you're staring at screens in the middle of the night, you've got your Wi-Fi on. If you're not sleeping, you won't heal. You won't heal so well. So all of this carnivore stuff works loads better when you're doing all the other ancestral stuff too. So, have a look at those amazing people. But yeah, we cover all that stuff in our Big Fat Challenge. And, people want to join up and get on the Zoom calls, and we have a lot of fun.
Okay. Tell everybody where they can find you and get that information.
Yeah, cool. What I'll maybe do is send you something just with my link tree in it, because it's not the simplest way now, because it always changes. I get people going, old videos of mine, they're going, oh, this link doesn't work, and that one, and it blah, blah. But the main thing really that we're doing now that it all stems out from is what I do with Ben with the Big Fat Challenge. All our events in the UK, our Spanish one coming up. We've got the books and our challenge and our Big Fat Tribe and whatever. But that's at thebigfatchallenge.com. My consults are at my website. If anybody's autoimmune and wants to chat through that, somebody who's been through that kind of thing and can sympathize and knows all those little tweaks in diet and otherwise. But otherwise, just go to the link tree underneath. I'll send you that, and everything's in there. So I'm going to check it out.
Alrighty, Phil. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. This was very educational.
Well, Serena, I've watched tons of your stuff, and I think it's great. And I love to get your message when you sent me one to say to come on. I was really happy to come on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I was honored to have you. It was really, really great.
Oh, you're so welcome.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Carnivore Revolution.